I want you to imagine a countdown clock,
Okay.
like just sitting right there on your desk. Or maybe it's, I don't know, floating in the corner of your vision as you just go about your day.
That sounds a little stressful, honestly.
Right. It is. But the number on that clock, it even in minutes and it isn't in hours,
Uh-huh.
it is ticking down from 30,000 days.
Wow. Yeah, when you say it like that.
Because if you sit down and actually do the math, 80-something years on this planet works out to roughly 30,000 days.
Give or take, yeah.
That is the average human lifespan. And every single time the sun goes down, that number drops by 1. It never pauses, it never resets, and you can never, ever earn a day back.
It really changes things, doesn't it? Framing human existence not in, like, decades, which always tend to feel expansive and almost endless to us.
Totally. They feel huge.
Right, but framing it in a finite, rapidly depleting number of days, the weight of each 24-hour cycle suddenly changes entirely. Like, the casual way we treat a random Tuesday afternoon suddenly feels incredibly heavy.
That heaviness, that relentless ticking clock, is basically the absolute core of our deep dive today. So look at your life right now. What are you doing with your day today?
It's a huge question.
It is. And we are exploring a really fascinating essay today. It was written on March 3rd, 2023. It's by an author named Su Feng, and the piece is titled Focus on a Single Goal for Life.
A very direct title.
Yeah, exactly what it says on the tin. Our mission today is to thoroughly examine this text's radical philosophy on extreme focus. We are going to look at its total rejection of this modern idea that we can somehow have it all.
Which is everywhere these days.
Right. And we'll also be exploring the highly specific spiritual cosmology it presents as the ultimate destination for human life.
And before we really dive into the mechanics of this philosophy, it is vital to establish some boundaries for our exploration today.
Definitely.
Because this source material contains a very specific religious and spiritual framework culminating in a particular cosmological worldview.
Right. So to be absolutely clear with you listening, we are not endorsing these viewpoints.
So,
We aren't taking sides, and we certainly aren't promoting this specific spiritual path. Think of us purely as your impartial guides here.
we just want to unpack the ideas.
Yeah, the psychological, the philosophical, and frankly, the deeply human ideas contained within this original text. Because whether you personally agree with the ultimate spiritual goal or not, the underlying mechanism of extreme focus it describes, well, it's just utterly captivating.
It really is. We're looking at the architecture of belief and dedication. We want to understand how this text constructs its argument for singular devotion, what it identifies as the greatest threat to a meaningful life, and how it prepares a person to withstand the psychological friction of an unconventional path.
Okay, let's unpack this. The text lays down a fundamental dividing line right at the start. It argues that life is, at most, 30,000 days.
Right. Every day lived is one day less.
Exactly. And it says the difference between an ordinary life and an extraordinary life comes down entirely to how you spend those specific days.
And it takes a very hard line on this.
It does.
Yeah.
If you live without a clear goal and let randomness dictate your actions, the text says mediocrity is absolutely inevitable. It's a mathematical certainty.
What's fascinating here is the absolute rejection of circumstance.
What do you mean?
Well, the author explicitly states that if your days are spent working relentlessly toward a singular chosen goal, it does not matter if you are rich or poor.
Oh, right.
It doesn't matter if your current environment is peaceful or completely chaotic, or if you are facing ease or intense hardship.
The text basically says none of the background noise matters.
Exactly. The final outcome will be extraordinary simply by virtue of that relentless forward motion. The enemy in this philosophical framework isn't failure.
Right.
The enemy is randomness.
Now I have to push back on this a little bit.
Sure.
Because living randomly, well, on one hand, living randomly feels a bit like doom scrolling through life.
That's a great way to put it.
You know? You're technically doing things. Your thumbs are moving, the screen is flashing, the days are passing, but you end up absolutely nowhere. You look up and 3 hours or like 3 years have completely vanished.
Leaving no trace.
Yeah, it's the illusion of action without any actual traction.
That is a very apt modern equivalent. Doom scrolling is basically the digital embodiment of the randomness the author is warning against.
Exactly.
You are letting external algorithms, or in the broader sense, just random external events, dictate where your attention goes, minute by minute.
But on the other hand, are we supposed to be single-minded robots? Isn't there joy and spontaneity?
The text would argue.
I mean, does every single day really need a rigid, locked-in goal? It sounds almost suffocating. What about the happy accidents in life? The wandering? Sometimes the best things happen when you don't have a plan.
Well, we are culturally conditioned to value flexibility, right? To go
Yeah.
with the flow and to keep our options open. But this text argues that keeping your options open is exactly the trap.
The trap. Wow.
Yeah. The author isn't concerned with the fleeting, temporary joy of a spontaneous afternoon. The focus here is strictly on the ultimate, extraordinary outcome over the span of a lifetime.
So no days off, just to wander?
In this philosophy, spontaneity is just a polite, socially acceptable word for distraction.
Ouch.
Think of it structurally. If you are in a boat and you just go with the flow, you are drifting. You might enjoy the breeze, but the current decides your destination.
Right, you're not driving.
If you aren't actively steering toward a specific shore, you are just waiting to see where the water dumps you. And drifting, inevitably, leads nowhere of consequence.
That makes a lot of sense. And to prove what escaping that drift actually looks like, the text provides some heavy-hitting historical examples of uncompromising focus.
It really does.
It doesn't just say, work hard. It points to Sakyamuni, the Buddha.
The author highlights that Sakyamuni dedicated his entire existence to one single goal, tirelessly and unwaveringly for over 40 years.
Over 40 years. And the detail the text uses to illustrate this is so striking. It notes that even when he was aging, leaning on a cane and having to physically beg for his food every single day, he never diverted his focus.
Not once.
Let's think about the reality of that. He didn't suddenly say, you know what, begging in the street is rough, the weather is bad, my back hurts, maybe I should pursue a small business.
Right. Maybe get a little side hustle going.
Yeah, like let me make just a little money to stabilize my living situation first, and then I'll get back to enlightenment. He didn't do that. He stayed the course through literal starvation.
Which is extreme.
And to prove this isn't just a religious concept, the text bridges over to the secular world, bringing up Nobel Prize winners.
Yes. And by comparing the spiritual devotion of the Buddha to the secular devotion of a Nobel laureate, the text isolates the actual mechanism of focus.
From the object being focused on.
Exactly. Think about a Nobel laureate in physics. They devote their entire life, often at the great expense of their personal relationships or health, to a highly specialized, incredibly narrow field of science.
They aren't trying to be a world-class physicist while also moonlighting as a concert pianist.
Or running for local office, or training as a professional triathlete.
Right.
The extraordinary outcome, whether that is the Buddha's spiritual awakening or the Nobel Prize in chemistry, is purely a mechanical function of moving forward toward a single point throughout the entire journey, sacrificing everything else that doesn't align with that trajectory.
Here's where it gets really interesting, because the text uses a brilliant, almost biological metaphor to drive this home. It says, a tiger will never grow wings.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, this metaphor is a devastating critique of what we now call FOMO, the fear of missing out.
Oh, absolutely.
The author calls it an unrealistic fantasy to believe you can have it all.
It really hits a nerve when you read the laundry list of human desires the text lays out. It lists wanting power, wealth, and fame.
Which is pretty standard.
Right. But then also desiring to be surrounded by a perfect, loving spouse and many children, aspiring to become a celestial being or a Buddha, wanting a completely carefree life while simultaneously indulging in all the world's finest delicacies, and traveling to beautiful sights.
It's exhausting just hearing it.
The author essentially asks, where in the entire universe can you find such a perfect scenario? It doesn't exist.
This is where the psychology of the text becomes highly relevant to our current culture. We live in an era that aggressively preaches having it all.
We really do.
We are constantly told, usually by advertisements and social media, that we should optimize every single aspect of our existence simultaneously.
You see it everywhere. You listening right now, you're supposed to be the ultimate worker, crushing it at your career and climbing the ladder, but you also need to be the perfect, ever-present partner.
And you need to be the adventurous world traveler who knows all the hidden food spots in 5 different countries.
Oh, and you need to have a perfectly curated, aesthetically pleasing home. And somehow, you are also supposed to be a deeply enlightened spiritual guru who meditates for an hour a day and never loses their temper.
It's impossible. When you try to be all of those things at once, you spread your energy so thin that you fail at everything. You end up exhausted, anxious, and perfectly average.
Perfectly average.
You end up average because you are attempting to defy your very nature. The text demands that you accept your limitations. You are a tiger.
Right, a taiga.
Tiger is magnificent, powerful, grounded. It commands the forest. But a tiger does not belong in the sky. To grow wings, a tiger would need hollow bones, a completely different musculature, a different respiratory system.
It would basically have to stop being a tiger.
Exactly. When you spend your life trying to grow wings, trying to aggressively grab benefits and lifestyles that belong to completely different paths, you waste the 140,000 days you have.
So the directive is clear. Stop trying to grow wings and put all your energy into being the most formidable tiger possible.
Be the tiger.
But accepting that you can only pick one path, like looking in the mirror and accepting that you are just a tiger, is actually just step one. It's the easy part.
Oh, absolutely. The text then outlines the brutal physical and psychological cost of actually walking that singular path.
Reading this part of the text, I couldn't help but compare it to someone training for a grueling ultramarathon, but doing it in total, absolute isolation.
The author does not sugarcoat the reality of this level of dedication. It is a grueling gauntlet.
Because if you decide to run 100 miles through a desert and there's a crowd cheering you on and a medal at the finish line, that's one thing.
You have external validation.
Right. But if you do it alone, people are going to think you've lost your mind. Your friends won't understand why you aren't at the weekend barbecue. Your family will worry about you.
And the physical reality is bleak.
It's chafing, blisters, sheer exhaustion, and nobody cares but you. The text lists these intense requirements for the journey. It demands extraordinary perseverance. It requires the strength to endure literal food scarcity and inadequate clothing.
Real physical hardship.
But the demand that really stopped me in my tracks was the psychological one. The author states you need a state of spiritual emptiness.
Yes.
And you must have the magnanimity to remain joyful and completely regret-free, even when you are mocked and insulted by others.
We need to explain why that specific state of spiritual emptiness is structurally necessary to survive the mockery.
Yeah, please do.
Human beings are social creatures. We form our ego and our sense of self-worth through the social mirror. We look at how our peers react to us to know if we are doing well.
Like getting likes on a post.
Exactly. When you pursue wealth, a nice car, or a prestigious job title, society applauds you. The mirror reflects a positive image. But when you abandon standard societal markers of success to pursue a singular, unconventional goal,
Especially a spiritual one.
right, especially a spiritual one, you shatter that mirror. You forfeit external validation. Society will not applaud your hunger. They will judge you for your ragged clothes.
They'll call you crazy.
And if your ego is still intact, if you still secretly crave their approval, the mockery will destroy your resolve.
So enthusiasm and passion aren't going to cut it. You can't just be really excited about your goal.
Passion is an emotion, and emotions fluctuate based on how tired or hungry you are.
Oh, that's true.
The text emphasizes the necessity of a clear mind and a well-defined path. You have to achieve spiritual emptiness to strip away the ego that gets bruised by insults.
So without that structural clarity,
Without a deeply ingrained logical understanding of exactly why you are on this path and how every hardship serves the destination, the author warns that the suppression and the temptations along the journey will inevitably break you down. You cannot survive a decade of being treated like a fool on enthusiasm alone.
you need a map and you need armor.
Perfectly said.
And that brings us to the most specific and frankly the most radical part of this entire deep dive. Because up until now, this philosophy of radical focus, the tiger, the ticking clock, the rejection of randomness.
It's broadly applicable.
Right. You could apply that framework to becoming a master cellist, an Olympic athlete, or building a tech startup. But the author, Schwiffing, isn't talking about playing the cello or starting a company.
No, he's not.
He has a very specific, ultimate destination in mind for his followers.
This is the pivot point in the text where we transition from the general psychological mechanism of focus into the highly specific cosmological framework of the author, the Lifechanyuan celestial.
Okay, so according to the text, a Lifechanyuan celestial has one and only one goal in life: to become a celestial being and enter the celestial realm.
That is the ultimate finish line.
And the text provides a massive multi-stage roadmap for this. It begins with becoming a Chanyuan celestial, upholding its values and severing worldly ties.
Which is the first big break from normal society.
Yeah, and from there, the follower strives to live in what is called the second home. Then it moves to the 1,000-year world, the 10,000-year world.
And ultimately reaching the celestial islands continent of the Elysium world.
Okay, whoa, hold on. We need to unpack this terminology because we just leaped from don't try to be good at everything to the 10,000-year world.
It is a massive leap.
What exactly are these places? I mean, if you're listening to this on your commute, the idea of abandoning your worldly ties for something called the Elysium world sounds completely alien. Are we talking about an actual physical commune somewhere out in the woods, or is this a literal roadmap for the afterlife?
It's actually both. The text constructs a progression that bridges both the physical world and a highly detailed spiritual afterlife.
Okay, how so?
Elements like the second home represent a tangible manifestation of these values. It's a way of living and structuring a community in this current physical life that severs ties with traditional societal structures.
So that part is here on Earth.
Yes, but the progression through the thousand-year world and into the Elysium world refers to cosmic realms. The author is laying out a post-biological roadmap, right? For after those 30,000 days are up, the argument is that any attachment to your current earthly life is an anchor preventing your consciousness from ascending through these specific cosmic tiers.
That is an incredibly rigid, all-encompassing framework. You basically have to dedicate every waking moment to progressing through these realms.
Just keep absolutely nothing else.
But what happens when the actual messy world gets in the way? Like, say you get drafted into a war, or there's a massive financial collapse and you have to take 3 jobs just to keep your family from starving. External circumstances force you off the path. Does the whole philosophy just shatter?
This raises an important question, and the author actually includes a fascinating pragmatic loophole to address it.
Really? A loophole in something this strict?
Yes. While the demand for singular focus is absolute, the text acknowledges the gritty reality of external forces and coercion. It states that if you are violently forced off the path by circumstances entirely beyond your control, the instruction is not to panic.
Oh, so you aren't supposed to, like, martyr yourself fighting a losing battle against overwhelming worldly pressure.
Exactly.
The text says you just have to keep the inner light alive. I love that phrasing.
It's very poetic.
It's like a seed surviving the winter. It doesn't fight the ice, it just waits.
You harbor the goal internally. You comply with the external coercion physically, but mentally, you do not surrender the destination.
Wow.
And the crucial mechanism here is that the very second that external force dissipates, the moment you are discharged from the draft or the financial crisis ends, you are instructed to instantly, without a moment of hesitation, return to the predetermined track.
That makes the philosophy incredibly resilient. It isn't fragile. It doesn't break if the real world interrupts it. It simply goes dormant, preserves the core objective in a state of spiritual emptiness, and resumes the march the moment it is able to.
It's a very practical approach to an absolute goal.
That adaptability inside the rigid focus is brilliant from a survival standpoint, but it leads to a terrifying prospect, one which the author absolutely does not shy away from.
The worst case scenario.
Let's look at it. You do all of this. You commit your entire 30,000 days. You endure the mockery of your peers. You sever your earthly ties. You wear the ragged clothes. You keep the inner light alive through terrible hardships. What happens if you run out of time?
The text is brutally, intensely honest about this existential risk. It states plainly that reaching the ultimate destination, the Elysium world, might take a few years, it might take several decades, or it might take an entire lifetime.
And then the text drops the hammer. It says it may even be unattainable in this current life.
Right.
You could spend decades of relentless persistence, reach day 29,999, and find yourself seemingly empty-handed on your deathbed.
And the text warns that if you look back at your life at that exact moment with regret, you could fall into a bottomless abyss of despair.
Imagine the sheer psychological weight of that realization.
It's staggering.
To have sacrificed everything. The wealth you could have built, the family you could have raised, the societal approval, the metaphorical wings of the tiger we discussed earlier.
All of it gone.
Only to arrive at the absolute end of your biological life without having reached the promised celestial shores. The potential for a psychological collapse, that bottomless abyss, is absolute.
It is.
So how do you survive that risk? Why would anyone take a bet where the failure state is a bottomless abyss of despair?
Because the text provides a very specific psychological antidote built right into the foundation of the philosophy.
Okay, what is it?
The author dictates that once you have set your goal and begun the journey, you must ensure you remain free of regrets. no matter how long it takes, and crucially, no matter whether you actually reach the destination in this biological life.
So you just force yourself not to regret it.
You must aggressively purge any resentment, doubt, or hatred regarding your choice.
Wait. So the text is saying, let me make sure I'm really understanding the mechanics of this because it feels counterintuitive to our modern, goal-oriented mindset.
It is very counterintuitive.
We are taught that success equals achieving the goal and failure equals missing it. The text is saying that if you dedicate your life to this singular goal and you physically fail to reach it before your clock runs out, but you somehow maintain a state of zero regret and zero resentment about the pursuit itself, you have actually reached the destination.
Yes.
How does that work logically?
That is the ultimate mind-bending paradox the author presents. The text explicitly states that by remaining completely unregretful and free of resentment about the hardships of the journey, you've already reached the other shore.
The process literally becomes the destination.
Exactly.
By eliminating the regret of failure, failure ceases to exist.
Yes. And if we look at the ultimate why behind all of this, the author explains the profound psychological benefit of this framework. Having an ultimate direction, a singular focus that you never waver from, makes life clear, simple, and light.
Light, not heavy.
Right. The true agony of the human condition, according to this text, isn't poverty or hardship. It is the overwhelming burden of choice.
The text actually describes a life without a single goal as an endless sea of suffering. It says that without a locked-in direction, life becomes filled with confusion, chaos, delusions, and countless worries. Every day you wake up and have to negotiate with yourself about what matters.
By choosing one goal and aggressively discarding all others, you completely eliminate that daily chaos.
You don't have to decide anymore.
You no longer have to wake up every morning and figure out who you are, what matters, or what you should be doing. The path is set in stone. The absolute clarity of the pursuit itself becomes a form of salvation. It rescues you from the overwhelming noise, the FOMO, and the anxiety of a random, option-filled existence.
So what does this all mean? We've traveled from a ticking clock of 30,000 dares through the rejection of a random life.
We've covered a lot of ground.
We really have. We've looked at the visceral dedication of the Buddha begging in the streets, explored why a tiger shouldn't try to grow wings, and walked all the way through a highly specific roadmap of cosmic realms, ending in the paradox of a regret-free journey. Whether you are listening to this right now because you're trying to build a career, master an art form, or perhaps you are seeking your own personal version of the Elysium world, Sofing's central thesis holds an incredible amount of weight. Radical, singular focus eliminates the agonizing chaos of endless choices and the modern trap of trying to have it all.
It forces a deeply uncomfortable confrontation with our own mortality and the reality of our daily choices. It demands that we look at our own 30,000 days and ask ourselves, what are we actually willing to sacrifice to achieve our definition of extraordinary?
Which leaves us with one final thought to mull over as you go about the rest of your day, building on everything we've unpacked from this source material.
I'd love to hear it.
The text claims that a life without an ultimate goal is an endless sea of suffering, and that striving with absolute dedication without a single shred of regret means you have already reached the other shore. So think about the days you have left on your clock. If you commit to a single goal so deeply, so completely, that even failing to achieve it before you die doesn't cause you an ounce of regret, does the actual physical achievement of the goal even matter anymore? Or is the true prize simply the profound mental clarity of the pursuit itself?